Good morning, it's morning coffee. Wanted to delve into one of the insecure attachment styles this morning and just talk about what does that mean and what does it look like, what are some of the traits, and how does it show up in your relationships, and what can you do about it? I think these are some things that sometimes we may recognize certain aspects, but then we don't do the real deep dive and start to understand really what's going on here for me. And so I would remind you that the four attachment styles are the secure attachment, which is somebody who is comfortable in intimacy, and they move very well in their relationships. Someone with an anxious attachment is going to be somebody who desires intimacy deeply, but they struggle with their fears of abandonment. You have folks who are dismissively attached or a dismissive avoidant, and they are the opposite. They're desiring that independence, and they don't trust that that there's anybody that they need or that needs them. And then there's a fearful avoidance, somebody who sits in this space of having tremendous conflict around it. They want intimacy, but they fear it as well because if they get too close to people, then somebody's going to cause damage to me. So I think it's really important to consider these things and see where you see yourself so you can work on it. And if you're in a relationship, see where you see your partner. And that will give you some help in understanding them. So for partners, today I want to look at the anxious attachment and what it looks like. What an anxious attachment looks like is you're afraid of being alone. You're seeking, again, that intimacy and connection, but you're very emotional and very dependent, and it arises, it's rooted in these abandonment fears from early childhood. You probably had a caregiver who was inconsistent or unreliable in their ability to be present. Certainly, we can't ignore that there are issues with our own personal temperance as we arrive on the planet. Some people just arrive really feeling very introverted versus extroverted, that sort of thing. And so that's going to play a role. Your history with traumas is going to play a role in this. And really that, again, the ability of your primary caregiver to be able to attune to your needs and desires as a child. And so how can it show up for us? Well, you're going to have signs of codependency. You're going to be uncomfortable or even absolutely avoidant of being alone. You're going to have, of course, this fear of abandonment, this difficulty setting boundaries, this feeling of unworthiness. I'm not worthy of love. You're going to need this constant validation. Do you care for me? Are we okay? Do I look good in this outfit? Do you like my hair? Do you all of those things? You're going to see a lot of people pleasing, and you're going to see a lot of a frequent situation with jealousy. These people can get jealous of others who are receiving what they want but are afraid to have, if that makes sense. You're going to be these people are very sensitive to changes in the language, in the conversation, in your behavior. If there's anything that's different, they notice it, and it gives them anxiety. Oh, what's going on here? And so you have to be aware of that. Difficulty with trusting. And they're very prone to stay in unhealthy relationships because they don't understand that if it's an unhealthy relationship, it needs to go. It's not, it may not be them, but they just need it so much. So they tolerate unhealthy behaviors. They tolerate it in themselves with this frequent texting, this frequent checking on social media, this suspicion when things are calm. I talked about this before. I think that the person that I was in relationship last year with became unhappy in the relationship because he was used to tremendous drama between him and his ex-wife, to the point of putting fists through walls and such. And that's not me. I am more aligned in a secure attachment, although I had to work towards that. That's not my attachment style from youth. And so when there's calm, it can make you uncomfortable because you're waiting for the next foot to fall. So, you have trouble saying no to things, you're people pleasing, and so on and so forth. And so for partners with individuals with an anxious attachment, what you can do is you can understand what their attachment style is. Understand it. See where it's coming from. Understand what we're talking about here today, the roots of these things. Where did it come from? And then be expressive of your gratitude. Give attention and reassurance to your partner. Hold your word. If you say you're going to do something, by golly, you better do it. Learn their love language. Learn what is it that makes them feel loved. And then activate that in the relationship. Make sure you're looking to be that. I would go back to the thing I talked about a minute ago, the guy I was with last year. I said, what is your love language? Physical touch and affection. And I was like, okay, well, that's easy for me because that's mine too. But at one point, as we were breaking apart, I heard him say, oh, I think you only want me for sex. And I thought, wow, that's a shift, because that I could hear that out of my own damn mouth in the past. Oh, you only want me for this. And you think about it with men. I come to you in morning coffee, just, right raw. I don't have makeup. I don't have my hair done. It's morning coffee. We're at the coffee. we're having coffee. We haven't primed for the day. But I'm not an unattractive woman, and I am, well-spoken and these kind of things. I have great confidence in who I am, and that's very attractive. And so when that happens, I find myself consistently saying, you only want me for the physicality, and I've outgrown that through a lot of work on myself. But to have that come back at me from a person who said, my love language is physical touch, was intriguing, because if your love language is physical touch, then you were most certainly getting plenty of it, because that's mine too. I would say to this person, you are clearly out of touch with what your love language is. And so we as individuals need to understand our love language before we start saying, this is my love language, because you're going to get yourself in a hot water at some point, because you're miscommunicating, right? So learning their love language is important. Learning it yourself is important. So helping them with this looming, the biggest part for anxious avoidance is this looming fear of abandonment. And I would say that while I'm in a more secure attachment style today, I believe that this is the exact attachment style that I worked myself out of through my healing. Because I will very quickly now, because I know it, I know myself, in my conversation with my current partner, I told him, I said, one of my biggest wounds is a fear of abandonment. That's my trauma. That's my trigger. And I want to be comfortable in a relationship now where when that trigger is pushed, I can say to my partner, this is triggering my abandonment fear, and have a response that's not defensive, but one that says, oh, okay, what can I do to help you feel secure? And the beautiful thing in this current relationship is that is exactly how this man functions for me. And as I learn more about him, he's not as secure as me in stating his needs. And so I he's pretty darn good at it, but I haven't heard anything like, that's really, your behavior right now is really making me feel uncomfortable or irritated or anything like that. I look forward to those things, though, to be frankly honest with you, which is a huge shift, to look forward to conflict. That sounds off, but the thing that you must recognize is, if there is no conflict, there is no growth. Period. We grow through the conflict. Now, if you're in a relationship with anyone, whether it's a friend, family, or a romantic partner, and all you have is conflict, that's a problem. That would tell me that you're not attuned to one another. You're not working through these things successfully. But if you can attune to one another, if you can recognize where your partner's weaknesses are, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a strength for you. And then when the moment arises where there is conflict, where there is someone like, me being able to say to my partner, look, this right here is triggering my abandonment fears, and have him specifically say that to me. In fact, if he's out of touch for too long, which he was recently because of some work responsibilities, he specifically used those words in a message back to me. I really want to make sure you don't feel lonely or abandoned or anything, because I'm thinking about you all the time, yada, yada, yada. And that was very healthy. Now, the thing I will throw in here is you have to be discerning, because that can happen certainly in the early days of a connection with somebody, with individuals who also have narcissism in them, and not necessarily clinically narcissist, although you're definitely going to see it there, but even in people who have a narcissistic tendency in any given area. We all have narcissism. You don't get out of bed in the morning and get dressed and get about your day if you don't have any narcissism. We love ourselves. And we think highly of ourselves, and we want good things for ourselves. That's a open-ended definition. That's narcissism. I look in the mirror. I want to make sure my makeup's right. I want to put my hair right. I want to do, before I go out in public to the world with my day, I want to put on good clothes. I don't go in my slippers and my pajamas, and so on and so forth. And so we all have a level of narcissism. It's when this narcissism rises to the level of manipulation of others that it becomes a problem for you in your connections, and potentially clinically an issue. And so we can talk about that more in depth another time, but we need to be careful about the words we're throwing around. Too many people throw that word in, and it becomes a trigger for individuals. And so I want to throw the clarity in there, because it's very important to have clear conversation and clear communication. You cannot anticipate that people will have comprehension if you are not communicating clearly, and if you don't recognize when you are not communicating, and instead of getting frustrated, try to reframe your conversation. So those are my thoughts today. I wanted to dig into this attachment theory a little bit this week, and really hone in on several things, and be candid. Where do I see this in me? how do I see this in my relationships? How am I navigating it? And of course, I'll try to do that with these others. But there are 4 attachment styles in the attachment theory. There's secure, anxious, dismissive avoidant, and a fearful or disorganized attachment style. And so today we talked about the anxious attachment and how it shows up and where it comes from and how we can work on that. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this type of conversation. If you'd like more of it or less or what have you. And if you're enjoying the channel, please subscribe and share the videos with friends or invite them to the channel. And just feel free to let me know what kind of things might be more interesting to see in the future, and I will try to accommodate that. So have a wonderful day today, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.